Two patrol cars pulled up outside my house at 8:40 on a Saturday evening, blue and red lights sweeping across my backyard fence, while 40 of my closest friends and family stood frozen mid-conversation, paper plates of brisket balanced in their hands. "We received a noise complaint," the officer said, glancing past me at the string lights, the smoking grill, my nephew's half-finished game of cornhole. "Someone reported a disturbance at this address." I already knew who'd called. I'd known it the moment I saw the porch light flick on next door, then off, then on again, 3 times in the span of 20 minutes, the way it always did whenever my new neighbor decided something happening on my property required her personal, silent surveillance. "This is a birthday party," I told the officer. "It's not even 9 o'clock. We're not being loud." "I understand," he said, not unkindly. "We still have to follow up on every call that comes in." I had no idea, standing in my own backyard trying to explain a barbecue to 2 uniformed officers, that the woman who'd called them wasn't simply an unfriendly neighbor with an aversion to noise. She was hiding from a life she'd spent years trying to disappear from entirely. And my birthday party had just become, in her mind, the exact kind of attention that could get her killed. My name is Odalis Marchetti. I'm 44, a marketing director in a quiet suburb outside Sacramento. And this is the story of how a petty neighborhood dispute over lawn chairs and grill smoke uncovered a woman living under witness protection, and what happened once I learned exactly what she was running from. Moving in next door. The house next to mine had sat empty for nearly 8 months after old Mr. Fenwick passed away, his adult children finally selling the property after months of estate paperwork delays. I've gotten used to the quiet, the overgrown hedges, the general sense of a house waiting for someone to bring it back to life. The moving truck arrived on a Tuesday in early spring, unremarkable except for how quickly it came and went. 2 men unloaded boxes and furniture in under 3 hours, working with an efficiency that struck me, even then, as slightly unusual for a residential move. I walked over that same evening with a plate of banana bread, the neighborly gesture I extended to everyone who moved onto our street, a habit left over from my own mother's insistence on making new arrivals feel welcome. A woman answered the door cautiously, opening it only partway, her eyes scanning past me toward the street before settling back on my face. "Yes," she said. "I'm Odalis, from next door," I said, holding up the plate. "Just wanted to welcome you to the neighborhood." She hesitated a beat too long before accepting it. "Thank you," she said. "I'm Sandra Ellery." Her voice carried the flat, practiced quality of someone reciting a name rather than simply saying it. Early impressions. Sandra kept to herself in the weeks that followed, though kept to herself undersold exactly how deliberately closed off she seemed. Her curtains stayed drawn at nearly all hours. Her mail arrived to a locked box she checked only after dark. She never lingered in her front yard longer than the minimum necessary to bring in groceries, always glancing up and down the street first, always moving with a kind of contained urgency that felt, even to my untrained eye, distinctly out of place for a quiet suburban block. "She's a little strange, don't you think?" my husband Marcus said one evening, watching through our kitchen window as Sandra checked her mailbox at 9 at night, flashlight in hand rather than simply turning on her porch light. "Maybe she's just private," I said, though privately I found myself agreeing with him more than I wanted to admit. I tried a few more times over the following month to build the kind of easy, casual rapport I had with most of our other neighbors. A wave here, a brief exchange about the weather there. But Sandra's responses remained clipped, guarded, always angled toward ending the interaction as quickly as possible. The first complaint. The first noise complaint came in April over what I genuinely believed was an unremarkable Sunday afternoon gathering with a handful of friends. Nothing louder than typical backyard conversation and a portable speaker playing music at a moderate volume. An officer showed up around 4 p.m., apologetic but obligated to follow protocol. "Someone reported excessive noise," he said. "I don't hear anything that seems out of the ordinary, but I do need to document the visit." "Was it my neighbor?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "I can't disclose who filed the complaint," he said, though his slightly awkward pause told me everything I needed to know regardless. I confronted Sandra about it the following day, standing at the edge of our shared property line while she watered a small patch of flowers she'd planted along her fence. "Did you call the police on my get-together yesterday?" I asked, trying to keep my tone measured, despite the frustration building in my chest. She didn't deny it. "I need things to stay quiet around here," she said, not meeting my eyes. "I'm sorry if that's inconvenient for you." "It's my own backyard, Sandra," I said. "We weren't doing anything unreasonable." She simply nodded, an apology that wasn't quite an apology, and went back to watering her flowers as though the conversation had already ended. A pattern forms. Over the following months, the complaints continued with a regularity that started to feel less like coincidence and more like a deliberate pattern of surveillance. A dinner party in June brought another visit. A 4th of July gathering, kept well within legal noise ordinances and ended by 9 p.m., brought yet another. Even a quiet outdoor movie night with my kids and a handful of their friends resulted in a knock on my door from a patient but visibly weary officer who'd clearly responded to this address more times than he wanted to admit. "I'm starting to feel like I'm being targeted," I told my sister Camille during one of our weekly phone calls. "Every single gathering, no matter how small, gets a call within the hour." "Have you tried talking to her directly, actually sitting down and having a real conversation instead of just confronting her at the fence line?" Camille asked. "She won't let anyone close enough to have a real conversation," I said. "She barely makes eye contact. I don't know if she's just deeply antisocial or if there's something else going on." I didn't yet understand how literally accurate that second possibility actually was. The HOA complaint. By late summer, frustrated with the repeated police visits and the growing tension it created within my own household, I brought the issue to our neighborhood homeowners association, requesting mediation between myself and Sandra regarding what I described as an excessive, disproportionate pattern of noise complaints. The HOA scheduled a mediation session for early September, a formality I approached with cautious optimism that a structured, moderated conversation might finally address whatever underlying issue was driving Sandra's behavior. Sandra didn't show up. The HOA coordinator, a patient woman named Bettina Ashworth, called her twice, leaving voicemails that went unreturned. "This isn't a great sign for resolving things amicably," Bettina told me afterward. "I'll send a formal notice, but I can't force her to engage if she's determined to avoid it." I left that meeting more frustrated than before, no closer to understanding why my neighbor seemed determined to treat every ordinary suburban gathering as a genuine threat requiring police intervention. The birthday party. The birthday party in October, the one that finally forced everything into the open, was for my father's 70th birthday, a milestone celebration I'd been planning for months, complete with a rented tent, a caterer, and nearly 50 guests spread across my backyard and driveway. I'd sent Sandra a polite note beforehand, slipped through her mail slot, informing her of the date and approximate timeline, hoping the advance notice might prevent another complaint. It didn't. The patrol cars arrived just as my father was blowing out the candles on his cake, the flashing lights drawing confused, concerned looks from guests who had no idea what was happening or why. I stood in my own backyard, mortified in front of family who traveled from 3 different states, trying to explain to 2 officers that a birthday party for a 70-year-old man did not constitute a public disturbance. "This is becoming a genuine problem," the older officer told me quietly, pulling me aside after confirming, once again, that nothing about the gathering warranted any actual citation. "We've responded to this address 6 times in the past 5 months. I understand you're frustrated, but I also need to tell you, off the record, that something about these repeated calls feels unusual to me, too." A different kind of concern. "What do you mean?" I asked, my curiosity outweighing my irritation for the first time since this pattern had started. "I've been on this beat for 11 years, the officer, whose name badge read Delgado, said. "Most repeat noise complaint callers, they're irritated, maybe overly sensitive to sound, but they engage. They come outside, they argue, they want acknowledgement. Your neighbor never does that. She calls, then closes her curtains, and doesn't answer if we knock to follow up. That's not the behavior of someone annoyed by noise. That's the behavior of someone who doesn't want attention drawn to this street at all, for reasons that might have nothing to do with the noise itself." I stood there processing that observation long after Officer Delgado left, the party continuing awkwardly around me, while I stared at Sandra's darkened house, her curtains drawn tight despite the early evening hour. Doing some research. That night, once the last guests had left and the rented tent sat empty and half disassembled in my backyard, I sat at my kitchen table and did something I probably should have done months earlier. I searched for Sandra Ellery online. I found almost nothing. No social media accounts under that name, no employment history I could locate through basic search tools, no prior addresses, no family connections, nothing resembling the kind of digital footprint most adults accumulate simply by existing in the modern world. That's strange, right? I asked Marcus, showing him my laptop screen. Everyone has something online these days, even people who aren't active on social media. Property records, old yearbooks, something. Maybe she just values privacy more than most people, Marcus said, though his tone carried the same uncertainty I felt myself. Or maybe Sandra Ellery isn't actually her real name, I said, the thought arriving fully formed the moment I said it out loud. A strange encounter. The following week, I ran into Sandra unexpectedly at our local grocery store, both of us reaching for the same brand of coffee in an aisle neither of us had anticipated sharing. She startled visibly when she saw me, her hand freezing mid-reach before she recovered enough composure to offer a tight, tense smile. "Sandra," I said, deciding in that moment to try a different approach than confrontation. "I wanted to apologize if my gatherings have been genuinely disruptive to you. I'd really like to understand what's going on, if you're willing to talk." She glanced around the store, the same scanning motion I'd noticed on her front porch months earlier, before answering. "It's not really about the noise," she said quietly, almost too quiet for me to catch it fully. "I just need my life to stay as quiet and unremarkable as possible. I can't really explain more than that." "Are you in some kind of trouble?" I asked, unable to stop myself. Her expression shifted into something close to panic. "Please don't ask me things like that," she said, and walked away without her coffee, leaving her cart abandoned in the middle of the aisle. Talking to Camille again. I called my sister that evening, recounting the strange encounter in detail. She looked genuinely terrified when I asked if she was in trouble, I said. Not embarrassed, not annoyed, actually scared. "That's a strange reaction to a simple question," Camille said. "Oh, Dallas, has it occurred to you that maybe she's hiding from something? Or someone?" "Like what, an abusive ex?" I asked. "Could be that," Camille said. "Could be something bigger. You said her digital footprint is basically non-existent. People don't usually erase themselves that thoroughly unless they have a very specific reason to." I thought about Officer Delgado's comment from the birthday party, his observation that Sandra's behavior didn't match ordinary noise complaint patterns. I thought about the locked mailbox she checked only after dark, the flashlight instead of a porch light, the way she scanned every open space before stepping into it. Another complaint, a different response. 2 weeks later, a much smaller gathering, just Marcus and me, hosting a handful of close friends for a quiet dinner, brought yet another police visit. This time, rather than simply defending myself to the responding officer, I asked directly, "Has anyone ever looked into why this address gets so many calls compared to literally every other house on this street?" The officer, a younger man I hadn't encountered before, hesitated before answering. "I'm not really supposed to discuss patterns across calls," he said, "but I will say, off the record, that this address does show up more frequently in our system than is typical, and not just for noise. There's a flag on it too, something administrative, but I don't have access to what that actually means." "A flag," I repeated. "What kind of flag would be attached to a residential address?" "I genuinely don't know," he said. "It's above my clearance level to see the details. I just see that something's there when I pull up the address." Reaching out to a contact. I mentioned this conversation to my cousin Desmond, who worked as a paralegal for a firm that occasionally handled cases involving law enforcement records. "A flag on a residential address usually means something specific," he told me during a phone call later that week. "Could be a domestic violence protective order on file, could be a registered address for a person under some kind of court supervision. In rarer cases, it could relate to federal witness protection coordination with local law enforcement, though that's usually kept extremely confidential for obvious reasons." Witness protection, I repeated slowly, the phrase landing with a weight I hadn't expected. Is that actually a real possibility here? It's rare, Desmond said, but it would explain a lot of what you're describing. Someone under witness protection, or even informal relocation for safety reasons, short of the formal federal program, would have every incentive to avoid drawing any attention to their address. Noise complaints, curious neighbors, police visits that create a documented pattern at a specific location. All of that is exactly the kind of visibility someone in that situation would want to avoid at all costs. Reconsidering everything. I sat with that possibility for days, replaying every interaction I'd had with Sandra through an entirely different lens. The locked mailbox wasn't paranoia, it was operational security. The scanning glances weren't social awkwardness, they were habitual vigilance. The panic when I'd asked if she was in trouble wasn't an overreaction to a nosy question. It was the exact reaction of someone terrified that her carefully constructed anonymity might be unraveling. I feel terrible now, I told Marcus one evening, the two of us sitting in our kitchen processing the shift in understanding. I've spent months being irritated with her, going to the HOA, complaining to the police about her complaining to the police. If she's actually hiding from something dangerous, every single interaction I've had with her probably felt like a threat to her safety. You didn't know, Marcus said. You couldn't have known. She never gave you any real information to work with. That's kind of the point, though, isn't it? I said. She couldn't give me any information, because giving me information might be exactly what put her at risk in the first place. A direct approach. I decided, against every instinct telling me to simply leave the situation alone, that I needed to speak with Sandra directly one more time. Not about noise complaints or HOA mediation, but about genuinely understanding whether she needed help of some kind, even if that help simply meant leaving her alone more completely than I had been. I wrote her a note rather than knocking, understanding by then that a direct, unexpected approach might only heighten whatever fear she was already carrying. Sandra, I wrote, I don't need to know your situation, and I won't ask again. I just want you to know that if you ever need anything, even just space and quiet, I'll make sure you have it. I'm sorry for the trouble the past few months have caused. That's all I wanted to say. I slipped it through her mail slot and didn't expect a response. Sandra's response. 3 days later, a note appeared in my own mailbox, unsigned, the handwriting careful and controlled in a way that suggested someone accustomed to being deliberate about every word they committed to paper. Thank you for your note, it read. I can't explain my situation, and I need you to understand that isn't personal. I have reasons for needing this street to stay as unremarkable as possible, reasons that involve people who could hurt me if my location ever became too visible. I'm sorry for the disruption I've caused you. I'm hoping to be relocated again soon, somewhere I won't have to worry about drawing attention to myself. Please don't investigate further. It genuinely isn't safe for either of us. I read that note perhaps a dozen times, sitting at my kitchen table, understanding finally the full weight of what I'd stumbled into. This wasn't an unfriendly neighbor. This was a woman living in genuine fear, managing a level of danger I couldn't fully comprehend, doing everything within her limited power to keep her exact location from becoming visible to whoever she was hiding from. A careful silence. I honored her request as best I could over the following weeks, scaling back my gatherings not out of continued frustration, but out of genuine concern for a woman whose safety, I now understood, might depend on exactly the kind of quiet, unremarkable existence I'd been unknowingly disrupting for months. I didn't tell anyone beyond Marcus and Camille what I'd learned, understanding instinctively that even casual gossip about a neighbor potentially connected to witness protection could carry consequences neither Sandra nor I could fully anticipate. Do you think she's actually safe there? Marcus asked one evening. If people are looking for her and this street has had this many police visits documented at her address, doesn't that create exactly the kind of visible pattern she's trying to avoid? I hadn't considered that angle, and it unsettled me deeply once I did. "I think I need to talk to someone who actually understands how this works," I said, not to expose her, but to make sure I'm not accidentally making things worse. Consulting Desmond again. Desmond connected me with a former colleague of his, a retired U.S. Marshal named Foster Kessler, who'd spent nearly 2 decades working within the Federal Witness Security Program before retiring several years earlier. I explained the situation carefully, emphasizing that I wasn't trying to identify or expose anyone, only to understand whether my own actions might have inadvertently created risk for a vulnerable person. "You're asking the right question," Foster told me during our call. Repeated police visits to a specific address, especially ones documented in a searchable system, absolutely can create a visibility risk for someone under protection or informal relocation. It's exactly the kind of pattern that could theoretically be traced by someone with the right resources and motivation, particularly if the person searching has any law enforcement connections of their own to exploit. "What should I do?" I asked. "I don't want to make things worse for her, but I also don't want to just ignore the possibility that something dangerous is happening on my own street." "The best thing you can do," Foster said, "is exactly what you're already doing. Minimize the pattern. Reduce the visible police contact at that address. If you're genuinely concerned about her welfare beyond that, there are anonymous ways to flag concerns to local law enforcement liaisons without creating additional documented contact at her specific address." Reducing the pattern. I made a conscious decision to move future gatherings to a rented event space or my sister's larger backyard several miles away, quietly explaining to close friends and family that I wanted to give my new neighbor some additional peace and quiet, without going into further detail about my actual reasoning. The pattern of police visits to my address stopped almost immediately, and with it, I hoped, some measure of the visibility risk I'd unknowingly been creating for Sandra over the previous several months. I still saw her occasionally, brief glimpses through my kitchen window as she checked her mailbox after dark or moved quickly between her car and front door. I no longer approached her directly, respecting the boundary she'd asked me to maintain, though I found myself watching for her safety in small, quiet ways I hadn't before, noting when her lights turned on in the evening, feeling a small measure of relief each time they did. A sudden departure. Nearly 2 months after our note exchange, I woke on a Wednesday morning to find a moving truck parked in Sandra's driveway. The same efficient, unremarkable process I'd witnessed when she first arrived, playing out again in reverse. 2 men loaded boxes and furniture with quiet, practiced speed, finished within a few hours, gone entirely by early afternoon. Sandra herself was nowhere visible during the process, presumably supervising from inside, until the very last moment before departing separately, avoiding even the brief visibility of overseeing her own move from the driveway. I stood at my window watching the empty house, feeling a complicated mixture of relief and lingering worry I couldn't fully articulate. I hoped, standing there, that wherever she was going, it offered her something closer to the safety and anonymity she'd been so desperately trying to protect on our quiet, ordinary street. A final note. 3 days after the moving truck left, I found one more note in my mailbox. The same careful, controlled handwriting I recognized immediately. "I wanted you to know before I left that I appreciated what you did these past few months more than you probably realize," it read. "Most people would have kept pushing, kept asking questions, kept trying to understand something I couldn't safely explain. You didn't. That mattered more than you know. I hope your parties are as loud as you want them to be from now on. I'm somewhere safer now. Thank you for not making that harder than it needed to be." There was no signature, no return address, nothing that could ever connect that note back to wherever Sandra Ellery, if that had ever truly been her name, had gone next. Processing what happened. I sat with that note for a long time, understanding that I would likely never know the full story behind Sandra's circumstances, the specific danger she'd been managing, or what she'd witnessed that made anonymity so critical to her survival. I understood, too, that this incompleteness was itself part of the arrangement, part of a system designed specifically to protect people by ensuring even well-meaning neighbors like me never had access to the full picture. "Do you think she's actually safer now?" Marcus asked me that evening, the two of us sitting on our back porch, the neighboring house dark and empty for the first time since Sandra had moved in nearly a year earlier. "I hope so," I said. I think about how frustrated I was with her for months, how badly I wanted her to just explain herself, engage with the HOA, act like a normal neighbor. I had no idea how much courage it must have taken her just to exist quietly on this street every single day, managing a level of fear I can't fully imagine. What I know now. People sometimes ask, when I tell this story, whether I regret not pushing harder to understand exactly what Sandra was hiding from, whether my curiosity should have driven me toward more direct answers rather than accepting the careful, deliberate silence she asked of me. I don't regret my restraint at all. What I learned, unexpectedly, through months of frustration over noise complaints and police visits, was that some situations require respecting boundaries precisely because you can't fully understand the stakes behind them. Sandra never explained the specifics of her situation, and she was right not to. Whatever danger she was managing existed precisely because information about her circumstances, her identity, her location, could put her at genuine risk if it spread even slightly further than absolutely necessary. A new neighbor. A young couple moved into the house next door about 3 months after Sandra's departure. Ordinary and unremarkable in all the ways she never had been. Friendly waves over the fence, casual conversations about landscaping, an easy openness that felt almost jarring after a year of careful, guarded distance. I still think about Sandra sometimes, wondering where she ended up, whether whatever danger she was running from ever fully resolved, whether she found the quiet, unremarkable life she'd been so desperately trying to protect on our street. I'll likely never know the answer, and I've made peace with that particular uncertainty in a way I never expected to. Where I am now. I host my gatherings again with the same enthusiasm I always had, loud and full and entirely unremarkable in the way most suburban celebrations should be allowed to exist without inviting scrutiny or concern. But I carry a different awareness now, a recognition that behind ordinary complaints and unusual neighbor behavior, there can sometimes exist entire hidden lives, entire histories of danger and survival that never announce themselves clearly enough for a curious neighbor to fully understand. Some nights, when I hear a car idle a little too long on our quiet street, or notice a stranger's face that lingers a beat too long near someone's mailbox, I think of Sandra, of the flashlight instead of the porch light, of the note that arrived with no signature and no return address. And I hope, wherever she is now, that the quiet she fought so hard to protect has finally, genuinely, become hers to keep.